Hi students! Welcome to the notes from Miss Flippyak's English class on parts of an email and parts of a letter. We're going to use these notes to complete the final two elements of our GAFE Canvas Who Are You project. So make sure that you have your notes paper that looks like this on one side, and then it should have an image of the letter format on the second side. We'll be using this note sheet in order to fill in the blanks that you have here with the identifying information for the different parts of a letter and different parts of an email. All right, let's get started. First off, the first part of an email that you will likely have, it doesn't matter what email service you're using, be it Gmail or Hotmail or some other kind of live mail that you're using, you're going to have a to field. In this to field is where you're going to type the email address of the recipient. Remember, it's always what their username is at whatever email system that they're using. So if you're using a Gmail, it would be the username at gmail.com. When you're emailing me, remember it would be my first name underscore my last name, so Samantha underscore Filipiak at hcpss.org. And that would be the same for all of your teachers. All of them would be their first and last name at hcpss.org. The second part of an email that you guys will have to pay attention to is the subject field. This is where you're going to provide a brief description of the message, just a few words to identify what the subject of your email is about. Now, it's really important for you to include a subject field in your email because you want to give someone an idea of what your email is about. Plus, it also lets the viewer know if it is a very urgent message. It allows them to know immediately if they have to respond right at that moment or not. So the subject field can clue in the viewer of your email as to what it is you're talking about. For teachers, it's really good if you put homework help. So that way teachers know if this isn't about an assignment that you have tonight, they might be more willing to respond to your email. But if it's just a random left blank field, a lot of times teachers won't look at it until the next day. So might give you a little bit of a help if you include a subject field. The third part of an email is going to be the body field. This is where you're going to contain several elements of your email, things that you would include to have a properly worded and properly composed email. First off, you would have a greeting of the recipient. So you'll notice here it says, "Hello, Mrs. Filipiak." This is where you're actually going to address the person you're writing to. If you don't know who the reader is of your email, like you're writing to a random place that doesn't have a specific person, you could write "to whom it may concern." You always want to put in a greeting so that way you know that you are talking specifically to them. The second part is you're going to compose a well-composed body. It's always good to start off with some sort of greeting after you address them and hope that they're having a great day. I hope that you had a wonderful summer. Something that engages them in the conversation before you get down to business. Then that's where you would actually go into detail and address whatever your email is about. You want to make sure that you're using proper English, that you're using proper grammar, that you're not embarrassing yourself through your email. You want to make sure you're looking and not making any grammar or spelling mistakes. The third thing you want to do, and this is always polite, is to thank your viewer for reading the email. Thank you for taking the time to read this email. You could also close it up with, "Please let me know the regards to your decision." Something that kind of brings everything in together, but also is polite in thanking the person for reading that email. You always want to end with something polite, especially if you're applying for a job, if you're asking a teacher a question, you always want to be proper. Then second to last, you want to have an appropriate closing. That would be "Sincerely, yours truly." Your student, if you're writing an email to a teacher, please write something that's appropriate. Don't write "love" to a teacher. That would be weird. You could put "best regards," some sort of appropriate closing that you would use in a professional setting. Then last but not least, you want to include your signature with your first and last name as well as identifiable information. If your email address does not include your name, this is especially important because that way teachers know who they're talking to, or an employer knows who's applying for their job. So it is extremely important for one, you to provide your first and last name, and two, identifiable information. So for a teacher, it would be best to put what class and what period you're from. If you're applying for your job, you might put your contact information, such as your email address repeated, a cell phone number, your address, something along those lines that identifies you. Then the next part of an email that you want to check out is your toolbar. Now, this might be different depending on what your email service that you're using. The current one that I have up here is Gmail. So you'll notice that there are different tools that you can use. You can change the formatting of the email address if you wish. You can put bullets, indents. You can also make attachments. So this little paper clip down here is very common to all the emails that you could use this to attach images or documents or something along those lines. This is a link from Gmail to use on Google Drive. You can include an image. This is a hyperlink to a website. You could even put in emojis. I would just make sure you're not going overload on the emojis because you want to make sure that your email is professional. Then last but not least, you have the send button. On an email, usually it's like the biggest button that you can see. You'll obviously see here that it's noted being blue, but you want to make sure that you proofread before sending this email. A lot of emails now do not have an unsend button. So you want to make sure that you've read the thing, you've typed in the recipient correctly, but I would make sure that you don't press the send button until you've reviewed everything and make sure that it is correct. If you'd like to know some further information on composing a proper email, there is a PowerPoint presentation on composing an email document on the GAFE. So these are the parts of an email. Now we're going to move on to the parts of a friendly letter. You might learn when you're in 11th grade and you have to do a resume for a job, you might learn a business letter, or you might have learned about it before. However, we're going to talk about a generic friendly letter that you could use in composition. This format can be used with an email. However, this is more attuned to if you are writing something out for someone, either handwriting or typing it. So let's go through the parts. First off, with a friendly letter, and you can choose to write in your notes right on this little document here. Okay. First off, with a friendly letter, you want to have a heading of your letter. What that includes is the street address, the city, state, and zip code from which you're writing, as well as the date that you're writing. Okay. You want to include all this information so that way your person can reach you at your location. They can mail something back to you. Also, putting the date identifies when it was written. 2, you want to have a salutation. I always think of Manny from Modern Family, where he always says, "Salutations, Jay." This is a greeting. It's just a fancy word for a greeting. This is where you could say, "Dear Mrs. Flipiak." When you go to write your letter of introduction, which we're going to talk about shortly, this is where you could write, "Dear Mrs. Flipiak." Again, it's just like an email. If you don't know who you're writing to, and you're writing to a generic place, to whom it may concern might be a good greeting or salutation to use. Part 3 is the body of the letter. This is where you want to include your paragraphs about what you're writing about. So you want to make sure that you always start a paragraph with an indent. You want to make sure each paragraph has a topic sentence. It has developing supports. I put 3 at the minimum. You can write as many supports as you'd like. And then always has a concluding sentence. The concluding sentence should wrap up, but also transition to your next topic. The next part of a friendly letter is the closing. After you've written your body paragraphs, you want to make sure that you include your closing. Now notice the alignment of the page. Whereas your salutation and your body of your letter is aligned on the left-hand side, you want to make sure that your closing and your heading align together. So notice if I drew like a regular straight line down here, it would have everything aligned here. How you do that is you actually would tab over. Don't space all the way over. You don't want to make sure that you write a line. You don't want to do that. Okay, you want to make sure that you tab over the spaces until you get here. I think 4.5 is the best to use, but you could tab over to get this. Now, the next part, and I know I've been clicking way too many times, the next part after you include your closing is your signature. That's where you're going to actually, if you're typing this, after you type in your closing, you could hit enter, go down a couple lines and leave a blank space, and then type out your name. Then when you print out your letter, you can actually sign your name in the middle. Or if you prefer, like I've done here, you can write your name in a fancy font and then write your name again in the same font as your entire letter. That differentiates it between just writing your name and having a signature. And you want to make sure if you are typing this that you write in double spacing, obviously with our MLA format. We wouldn't keep the same paper format since this is a letter format. We would obviously use this kind of heading. We would not put our name, date, and class period and all that stuff up here. Or if we're handwriting this, which we might do for a draft, you want to just make sure that you skip every other line.